Good afternoon, parents. It's a privilege to be able to talk to you. I'm Dr. Jerrie, the Director of Medical Services here at Vista Clinic. I'm a psychiatrist as well as a parent. I've been married now for the last 27 years, and my wife is a pre-primary school principal, and we've got 4 children, ranging in the age groups from 13 to 21. So we're navigating primary school, secondary school, as well as university at present. Now, each home is unique, and I often get asked, what's the best solution? And the reality is there are no best solution. There is no right solution either. There are good solutions, but it does take time, a lot of thinking, a lot of love, and a lot of trying. So I want to talk to you about some different principles within the pandemic. The reality is we're all in this pandemic. It's like a roller coaster. We strapped into that car, and we can't get out. Once the ride has started, there's no way that you can get out. And we don't know how long this ride is going to be, and we don't know how the ride's going to look either. All we know is that at some point in the future, it's going to stop, and then we can get out. The pandemic has very significant impact on our children. On average, there's about 250,000 children that drop out of school early. Up to May this year, that figure has gone up to 750,000. That's 500,000 more children dropping out of school because of the pandemic. Previous pandemics has also shown us that people can be more emotional, they can become depressed, they can even contemplate suicide. But there's also a group that grows throughout the pandemic. Now, to help you look at solutions and possible options, it's too good to understand what happens in a pandemic. Now, a pandemic creates a crisis time. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's a time of intense danger or difficulty. And the way the virus does this, or the pandemic does it, is that it creates fear for us for the virus. There's a lot of insecurity about going to school, not going to school, writing exams or not, health, finances, and even life. And then quarantine itself. Quarantine is not good for us as humans. We're quite sociable as beings. And that combination creates that sense of difficulty and of danger. Then we also have a very dynamic reality. The one moment my children were preparing for exams, the next moment they were on holiday. They can't plan too long ahead because then things change. Social distancing change, risk changes. We continuously have to adapt. Now, we all have patterns of behavior, and we also have habits. Both of those are there to conserve energy. I don't have to think about everything. During the pandemic, most of that's been taken away. Now suddenly my child has to think about everything. I have to think about everything. And that takes more energy. Things are slower, and you can't just enjoy something for what it is. You first have to think whether it's enjoyable or not. And then we're also exposed to the constant messages of danger. Wash your hands, put on your face mask, and we're being told how bad things are going, and we hear about death. We hear from friends. Our children are exposed to it through social media, much more than what we were when we were their age. Now, our bodies can't differentiate between danger in another house, in the Western Cape, or even in Spain. All it does, it hears this message of danger, and it automatically triggers that fight or flight reaction. Now, that system has been designed to keep us alive, and it uses a lot of energy, but it's focused on the here and the now. It doesn't focus about the long term, and it's focused on survival, not growth. If you start using that system over longer periods of time, it drains a lot of energy. What it also can do, it can make you jump from one solution to the next because it doesn't think about the future. And if you take all of that together, it really creates a nice intensive situation where people are more tired than normal. They are using more energy than normal just to make life go by and to cope with each day. You also expect the children to use more energy because they've got less skills and less experience, so they have to work through more things. Now, what does that imply? That implies that when we talk about, I have got a reality around me, that, that reality has changed. And how has it changed? Well, every home is unique. What they looked at when they did some research on prisoners of war is how did those people cope with reality and with hope? And they found that prisoners that managed the day-to-day reality yet kept their hope on the future did the best. But the hope on the future wasn't focused on we will be rescued next Wednesday or next Tuesday or come April or Christmas. They had an open hope. The people that hoped on something that was very concrete actually died of a broken heart because they struggled to cope with the reality. Now, when my reality changes, I tend to unconsciously change as well. I start school, I go to university, start a job. Every time my priorities tend to shift, and they tend to shift unconsciously. And when those shifts happen and it's positive, as a rule, we as humans don't mind it and we adapt. Look at how you adapted when your child was born, when you went from primary school to maybe secondary school. There are different examples, but every time it's positive, we tend to react positive to that as well. When it's negative, we tend to want to cling to previous priorities. And what that does, it brings a misalignment between our reality and our priorities. And if we cling to priorities for our children, it brings a misalignment between what they're doing and what their reality is. And you set them not up for failure, but it's a risk that you have that you can set them up for failure or create a situation where they become hopeless because they can't achieve the priorities or work or align their activities to those priorities. They also can get a very poor self-concept. To be able to look at priorities, you need to first identify what's your reality. How does it look at the moment? And ask yourself those questions. What's important in this moment? What needs to be done or needs to happen now? And especially what needs to happen now to allow my child to grow, not just survive. Because again, this is a long-term ride. It's not a short-term ride. So survival it's okay, but it's not going to allow your child to grow throughout this period and become stronger going out the other side. Now, what some people can do there is they take their long-term priorities and they park them, they write them down and they put them aside and say, okay, let's get pandemic priorities and work on them. In that way, they don't lose the long-term priorities, but they are realistic that they might not be achievable. At the same time, you can ask yourself, what do we need as a family, plus my child, to be able to breathe? All the pressure makes it difficult to emotionally to breathe. And asking yourself and your child that question can give you some interesting answers. And then the difficult question to ask your child and yourself is, am I accepting my child for who he or she is, or are they only acceptable when they are performing? And that can be a difficult one, because if we drive performance, the person gets lost. Performance is important, but the person is also important. So sit and talk that through with your child. Another interesting concept that can help you think is the one about 100%. We very easily try and teach our children and ourselves that I give 100% at work and 100% at home and 100% for my friends and family. The reality is we're only one person, we have one body, and we have only 100%. And that means if I give 10% for work, or in my child's case, 20% for school, 20% for homework, 20% for sport, then I can give 100% of 20% and 100% of 20% for homework, and the same for sport. If I live as if I've got more than 100%, it tends to lead to burnout, hopelessness, depression, and then just giving up on life. Now, children, as I said before, struggle more to cope with the pandemic because they've got less skills, especially the adolescents that's in that transition phase between being child and young adult. So you expect them to have less energy available to do their normal activities. And this can vary from child to child. You might get an A-grade student that suddenly struggled to pass. Your average student might be okay and still going on doing their average sort of work. But it's working out with your child is how much energy are they using. And that again can be very dynamic, because if you have a child that likes to plan things long ahead, suddenly can really struggle with this dynamic reality that we live in. And then helping them adapt their plans to shorter term can really assist them in conserving energy. How do you help your child manage insecurity? One of the nicest questions I think you can ask yourself is, what do I have control over, and what does my child have control over? Anxiety makes me feel out of control. I tend to focus on the future. By asking myself those questions, I can anchor myself in the here and the now. And I can help my child identify the things that they've got control over and that anchors them in the here and the now. Here at Vista, we also use the acronym Happiness Helps. It's well-researched activities that create happiness. And happiness balances insecurity and actually makes you grow beyond insecurity. So the HELP stands for helping others. So what can your child or your adolescent do in the house, outside of the house? And again, they need to work that out. Then exercise. Physical exercise makes us feel happy. It creates a lot of good feeling, makes us go forward. And then learning something new, a new skill. Learning how to cope with anxiety or insecurity, again, creates happiness. And then playing is so important. It's so undervalued. When I play and I laugh with whoever I'm playing with, my brain secretes oxytocin. That makes me feel bonded. And when I feel bonded, I don't feel so lonely. And if I'm not so lonely, I'm less likely to be suicidal. And it's not always just the competitive play that we're so used to in Gauteng. It can be just playing cards for the fun of it, or any silly game that brings joy and excitement to the person that does it. And then the last one is the spiritual growth. It's so important to develop a child's spirituality around your belief system, looking at what activities make us grow. And again, within sort of reduced amounts of energy, it can be, what can I pray for you? Can be, let's go walk in nature, that we connect with nature and the creation. And if you believe in that, also in terms of the creator of that creation, it brings calm to our lives by developing our spiritual life. And then you can look at portion controlling your child's social media as well as exposure to the news. How much do they need to know? What is age appropriate? And then remember, they do listen to our conversations. So be careful what you say and how you speak out about your concerns, and how do you verbalize your hope for the future. For me, the big thing is our reality has really changed. It is a roller coaster. We don't know how long this roller coaster is going to be for. What we do know is it will end someday, and we will be allowed to continue in a different manner. I want to encourage you to enjoy this process of talking with your child and trying to work out with your child what will allow them to grow as a human being and as a person so that they can be stronger throughout. And if they're really struggling, how can they struggle in a different way? I want to encourage you that there are no right or best solutions. There are good solutions. So allow yourself and your child to go through a process of communication and just getting to know each other from a different angle. And I wish you well during the pandemic. Thank you very much.